YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on demand, sports talk for America.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now, with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events.
That's right, Bobby. Go Big Blue. We'll be going back in history. If you love the Giants, this is the show for you folks. Me, the Mac Man, and Big Bobby G. We're gonna take you on down history lane. We'll talk about trivia. We'll talk about some of the greatest teams the Giants had, some of the greatest coaches. We'll talk about the NFL today and draft picks. I mean, we got a lot on our plate today, Bobby. How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing great. This is going to be a fun show, I think.
Yes, sir. I believe it is too. So let me put this out there right away. And Bobby, don't let me forget this at the end of the show because it's embarrassing. I forgot to give the answer yesterday. So last week, yeah, it's yesterday to me. I mean, as you get older, last week was yesterday. You know what I mean? But anyway, this is the Giants trivia question. And normally do Just Ask Jack, but we're going to do Just Ask Big Bobby G. Which player scored the most TDs? Which Giants player in one game? So keep that in your head so that we, by the end of the show, and remind me to give the answer this time. And
okay.
We'll do it. So let's get into it, Bobby. 1981. The Giants had just, in that season, they made their first playoff appearance in 18 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we think we're going through a drought now. And, we've said maybe last year Giants were worse than the 70s Giants, any of those teams. But anyway, we went through 18 years, and I know me and you both watched, all the 70s, late 60s, I barely remember, but at least the 70s. And, we just couldn't get it together. I think we had one season where we were like at 500 or close to it. I think that was 72 when the Dolphins had their perfect season. I think that was the only season that we were around 500, if I'm not mistaken. And it was the last game against the Dolphins. We ended up, of course, losing to the Dolphins in their perfect season that year. So I think that was as close as we ever got to making the playoffs. But in 1981, we ended up going 9-7, got in as a wild card. And I mean, it was a up and down year. The head coach was Ray Perkins, who ended up, he only coached a couple of years for us. And I think this was the year, and we had Bill Parcells was our defensive coordinator. Bill Belichick was our linebackers coach at the time. Bill Coryell was our special teams coach. So a lot of successful coaches were on that team.
Absolutely. No, it was a great staff, up and comers. I mean, I remember, God, I'm old enough to remember Bill Belichick being a linebackers coach. And heck, I'm old to remember when Bill Parcells was a linebackers coach before he was the defensive coordinator. So I remember that too. So yeah, it was, and that season was a lot of fun. As a matter of fact, and we'll get to it later. I was at that last game against the Dallas Cowboys when Joe Danello kicked us into the playoff. Well, he didn't get us in the playoffs because Green Bay had to lose the following week, but we'll get to that at the end. But I was at that game.
Wow.
It was a Saturday night game, or Saturday, like it was afternoon, like 4:00. Because by the time I got home, we went to a bar to celebrate the Giants win.
Yes, over the vaulted Cowboys too. Joe Danello, number 18. That's a name from the past that Giant fans know, but non-Giant fans wouldn't know that. But anyway, pretty good kicker. I enjoyed it. Yeah, he did pretty good. So we ended up. Let me see if I got it right. So we lost the first game 24-10. We ended up coming back and winning the second game against Washington 17-7. Now, Washington in the early 80s, had Super Bowl. I think they had 3 Super Bowl teams in the 80s.
Very good football team. That game really kind of helps. That game actually showed the Giants, I think, and probably people watching the game, that something's going to be special. Something's going to be. Hello, J Train. Thanks for saying hi. I think though we got to take a step before we talk about the 81 season.
Okay. Let's
take a step back to the draft and how that unfolded. Because without Lawrence Taylor, there probably is no 81 season. So the interesting part of getting Lawrence was the Saints that year had the number 1 pick in the draft. We had the number 2 pick in the draft. Luckily for us, Bum Phillips is the Saints head coach. And he came from the Houston Oilers. Right. And you got to remember back in the 70s, you ran the ball first. You kind of built your team around a running back, whether it was Franco Harris or someone like that, or Earl Campbell, who the Oilers built their team around.
Right.
So Bum takes over the Saints. They have the first round pick. And the best 2 players coming out of college football at that time were Lawrence and a running back named George Rogers.
Right. J Train's all over.
So luckily for us, the Saints, in Bum's philosophy of building a team, he envisioned George Rogers to be the next Earl Campbell.
Right.
And that's how he wanted to build his team around a great, big, strong, fast running back. Now, George had a nice career. He didn't have Earl Campbell type of career, but he had a nice career. So, but with Bum doing that, he let us take Lawrence Taylor.
That's a great bit. J Train is one of the hosts on some of our shows. He's a huge Saints fan. So when you started talking about the Saints, there he is, George Rogers. He popped that name right up. He knew who exactly you were talking about. Am I mistaken saying that George Rogers ended up going to the Washington Redskins?
I forget who did he bounce around to a couple different teams after the Saints? I don't remember exactly where he ended up.
I'm trying to remember who was the running back after Riggins. Was it George Rogers?
I don't recall. They had a smallish running back there too.
Yes.
Yes, J Train. You could have had Lawrence Taylor, and who knows where the Saints of the '80s would have been. And I remember, and I'm trying. Oh, he went to San Diego. Okay.
Yes, that's right.
And I'm getting away from here, but I remember when Lawrence was playing a Saints game, he had a separated shoulder in that game and played the whole game and basically single-handedly from the defensive outside linebacker position won that game against the Saints. I don't know if J Train can remember that, and if he doesn't, he should maybe Google that game because that was a heck of a game by Lawrence. So
yes,
the Giants. So obviously and it's funny because when you think about the Giants team, that their strength of that team in 1980 was the linebackers.
Right.
And so, but George Young knew that they needed he was kind of those once in a lifetime, or maybe. And we can talk about Hunter a little bit later in this same vein. One of those transient players that come along once every 10 years. In Lawrence's time, he was to this day, they're still looking for the next Lawrence Taylor. So I don't know what type of hemisphere he's from, or he's a once in a 40-year player. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a once in a generation at least, Bobby. And let's not forget, I mean, they picked up Billy Ard, their guard, who ended up staying around for the Super Bowls. They picked up Byron Hunt from SMU, another linebacker who played on special teams mostly. But in the 80s, the Giants' second-string linebackers could have started for a lot of teams. They were so deep at linebacker.
Absolutely. We'll talk. Well, I'm going to get to Byron Hunt a little bit later when we get to the last game against the Cowboys.
Right.
How he kind of cemented that win for us. So yeah, it wasn't even Lawrence Taylor or Harry Carson who really closed the door on the Dallas Cowboys on that early evening game, but it was actually Byron Hunt. So Lawrence comes to the Giants, and right away, Derek Thomas was close. Yes, his career was cut short. Not sure. He might be just a hair below. Derek Thomas was a hell of a ball player, no doubt about it.
No doubt.
I don't know if Lawrence could will games all by himself. I'm not saying Derek Thomas couldn't do that. I know there was one game that he had 5 or 6 sacks in one game. Maybe
crazy.
7 sacks.
They changed the left tackle position because of Lawrence Taylor. It used to be a big, slow guy. They had to get big, fast guys. That's what they started drafting. They actually changed the offensive line position of left tackle because of Lawrence Taylor. So
you're talking about offensive linemen when Lawrence came out. So that's interesting that you bring that up, Matt, because an offensive lineman, a guard, maybe was 250.
Right.
And a tackle, maybe 270. Well, Lawrence came out, he was 6'4", 6'5", 250. So he was as big as a guard and ran like a running back.
Right.
I remember Phil Simms saying a story about him the very first. So we're back in 1981, training camps here. Lawrence comes out, and Simms says in an interview, the 6 of the first 8 plays he sacks the quarterback.
Yeah.
In practice, and they're all looking. Everyone's looking around at each other, saying, "Ooh, what's this?"
Yeah.
But that's so the 81 season can't be written, I don't think, without having Lawrence there. And you're right. It was kind of a funny season that season because the Giants were 9-7, as you mentioned, and they would go on. Lawrence Taylor, to me, is the greatest player I've ever seen. I never seen a better player than Lawrence Taylor. And I don't care if he played for Giants or he played for, the Chargers. He's the greatest player that I've ever seen.
I could say arguably, there are other players that different positions that I would put up there. He's the best outside linebacker of all time. There's no doubt about that. No doubt. But, if you want to talk defensive ends and Reggie White and Bruce Smith, there's
all good ball players.
There are others that you could put there. So let's talk about the Big Blue Fun Bunch. It wasn't the Big Blue Wrecking Crew at the time. It was the Fun Bunch or the Crunch Bunch. I forget what Carson called them. But at the time, it was Brian Kelly, who ended up getting replaced by Gary Reasons eventually. Yep. Harry Carson in the middle. You had LT and you had Brad Van Pelt. And we did a spotlight on Brad Van Pelt, who was a very unsung hero with the Giants, played on a lot of bad teams. At least he got 1 year where he ended up going to the playoffs. So I was happy about that for him. One of the better cover linebackers, outside linebackers in the league. Let me give you the defensive backfield, Bobby. We had Larry Williams. We had Mark Haynes, Terry Jackson, Beasley Reese. That was our defensive backfield. We had a pretty good defense.
That was a nice back portion of the team. We had great linebackers, and we had we had George Martin, who kind of anchored the defensive line. That was a very, very good team. But what's funny about that team? When they became really good, and it was a small thing that George Young did in 81. He pulled off a trade that brought Rob Carpenter to the Giants
great
in 1981. And he was kind of the catalyst that helped the offense go to another level. I mean, besides Ernest Gray, I know they had a tight end, Mallard or something. I forget his name. Melby, yeah. Something like that Phil threw to. This is Phil's third year in the league. And Phil would end up getting hurt and separating his shoulder in 81. I want to say it was 10 or 12 games in, maybe 10 games in. So he doesn't finish the season. Right. So then we go with Scott Bruner comes in. And Scott finishes the season for the Giants in 81.
Yes.
The last game, and I mentioned, and I'm kind of jumping around here. You can, please, Mac, if you remember a couple of games, throw them in there. I can remember a lot of games that season. And I remember playing the Eagles that year and Lawrence being very upset because the Eagles had beaten the Giants 12 straight games or something like that. And they ended up beating them again during that season. So it was an up and down season for the Giants. It was probably the most fun I had as a Giants fan ever because we were winning and we were competitive. Even if we were losing, we were still competitive.
Yeah.
But it all kind of, to me, a couple things happened at the end of the season that really I thought was great. One, we're playing Dallas at home, mentioned the game. Byron Hunt intercepts a Danny White pass. Joe Danello, in overtime, kicks the winning field goal. So we're not in the playoffs yet. We're 9-7. Green Bay has to lose the following week against the Jets. And the Jets do us a favor and beat Green Bay. Yeah, we go to the playoffs. And then who do we play? First game, the Eagles, who have our number. And we're coming off the NFC Championship. They were just in the Super Bowl the year before against the Oakland Raiders, and Oakland had beaten them in the Super Bowl.
Right.
So we go to Philly, and I'm sure Philly's feeling pretty good about themselves, and we really just gave it. I mean, right from the beginning, we scored on a fumble. We scored different ways. Carpenter was great. The defense was great. Scott Bruner was efficient. And unfortunately, we the next week we run into the eventual Super Bowl champion.
Yes,
which was the San Francisco. And actually, what's cool about that game, I think, in 81, it kind of started that rivalry. Even though if the 49ers were in our division, I always thought during the 80s, not just in 81, but I always felt that the 49ers were a rival of ours because we always seemed to catch them in the playoffs.
What impressed me about the 81 season is that we had to wait on the Jets, is true, but we won the last three games. We were 6-7, and we ended up beating the Rams. We beat the Cardinals, and we beat Dallas. The last three games, to me, I mean, we could have easily lost to Dallas. The Rams, we barely snuck by. And the Cardinals were not a bad team in the 80s. They had some good teams.
They had some good teams.
But if you think about it, Bobby, right? 80s, the Redskins won 3. San Fran won, I think, 3 in the 80s. I think did they win the 81 Super Bowl? I think
San Francisco would they beat the Cowboys in the catch. The cat was that 80. That's
80? I'm not sure. 81.
It was 81, and then they go on and they play the Bengals, right?
Right, and beat Cincinnati, if I'm not mistaken. So with Ken Anderson at that time, I think I'm almost positive because they ended up playing him again with what's his name, the Jet quarterback there. I can't think of his name. Boomer Esiason. When they went again with Boomer, yes. And they lost again. But I mean, that's what was really cool about 81. And what I also liked was Harry Carson got that interception in the wild card to win that game in the middle. This was Harry Carson. He was there in 79. He was losing. He's losing. Finally, 81 gets to the playoffs. And Harry Carson, he ended up being the captain. I love Harry Carson. I think Harry Carson is one of the greatest middle linebackers of all time. I think he's underrated. But he really finally gets to the playoffs, and of course, eventually, still takes time, but he eventually get to his one Super Bowl appearance. And anyway, it was 81 was yes. Yeah, we said that, J Train. I mean, come on now. Come on, you're behind us right now. So anyway, the 81 was a good year for the Giants, and finally being a Giant fan, and I think every organization goes through it where there's a long time where you don't win a playoff game or you look at Dallas now. I mean, you look at some of the better teams that have fallen on hard times, and you go through this long period of just being bad. And finally we got in and the 80s were good to us. That's for sure. We were there in the mix at least all the time. So
yeah, no, it was great. It was, and I know we could probably get a little ahead of myself, but because of the strike in the 80s, we might have won another Super Bowl. I'd say yes. we could have. I'd say we should have, but we could have maybe won another Super Bowl. But
I don't think anybody crossed for us. There's some teams they crossed. I think the Redskins, some of their players crossed. Theismann, I think, crossed. I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure. I know that that was a bad strike. I know that. So, I don't know. Some teams had players cross, others didn't. I don't think ours. In fact, I think Parcells didn't want any of the players to cross. If I remember correctly, he wanted the team to stay together. He didn't want the team to be fractured the following year. So, the head coach we're going to talk about. We're getting better, folks. As far as the coaches that we get to, because we were talking about the worst coaches. Steve Owen was a coach, and he coached for the Giants for 24 years. Can you imagine that today? I mean, George Halas did for a long time. Really, that's really the only other one I can think of that really coached that long for a team.
Paul Brown.
Paul Brown, yes. He coached him. Yeah, he did. He did before he went to the Bengals. He was there from the 40s and the 50s. So I think he's there for about 2 decades. You look at this guy, he was a player, coaches. A lot of them were back then, right? George Halas played and he coached and then, and managed and GM'd. I mean, they did everything back then when football was first starting. It's hard to imagine football being like I don't know how to compare it today, like a town program, right? You had the names of the people who were supporting you on the back, and you got, that's how you made your money, and it was a different time, man. It was you didn't make any money. You played because you loved the game, and it was just a totally different time. So, but anyway, he won. I think he won 1 as a player, 2 as a coach. Coached 24 years. Had a 6. Let me give it to you right here. There was a 155 wins, 108 losses, 17 ties. So Hall of Fame. So there you go, Steve Owen, 1930 to 1953, 24 years of coaching. Something to be said about that. So
who took over after him in 53? I forgot.
53. I think that was the guy, the head coach.
We talked about him.
The big Texan guy who ended up bringing in Vince Lombardi and Tom Landry.
Exactly. Yes. We actually did a spotlight of him a few weeks ago, or a couple months ago, I guess it was now, and everything. And it was just a different time. It almost sounds like they were like a softball team. How you see the summer softball teams, and the guy who maybe manages the team also plays on the team, and
right.
The guy who owns the liquor store that's on the back of their shirts or something like that.
the guy that gets the biggest donation, his kid plays shortstop. I mean, but right. I mean, that's the way it was, and it's hard to imagine today. I mean, with the how, I know what's the word I'm looking for? How huge and how conglomerate, and it's a huge business. But it all started somewhere, right? It's same thing with
Everyone
baseball, and basketball and such. So, but it's hard to imagine the NFL. Of course, it wasn't called that way back when, but for them to be, running around with, no helmets on and canvases. And I saw a picture just to change the subject real quick. First helmet ever worn. It was like a late 30s, early 40s. The guy broke his nose. So he had this helmet, but with a nose protector. It was really called the first helmet in football. It was a riot to see this guy running around. That's how bad they wanted to play this game for no money. They didn't care if they had a broken nose or not, knocked out teeth. Let's go play football. I mean, that is incredible.
A lot of these guys too, because college football was so big with Newt Rockne, and that was really the draw of football was college football. So when these guys graduated, and they had to get a real job, which they did anyways during the course of their lives, they still were able to play for peanuts, a couple $100 a year, just so they can go and play a game that they just loved, and they were just playing, as a young man just a couple of years ago in college, in the 80,000 fans and 60,000 fans in the stadium, and there was probably about 50 in the stands at an NFL game back then. It was they probably made more money selling hot dogs at the game.
They probably did, Bobby. I talked to Jim Jeffcoat one time. I don't even know if it was on here. I think it was off there. I'm not sure. It could have been on here. And I said, he said to me one time, he said, don't say anything, but we would probably play this game for no pay at all. Some of these guys back then, I know about today because the Diva wide receivers want every dollar they can get in NIL and the portal. But he said back then they probably would have played for no pay. They got their jobs and they would have went and played football. That's how much they love playing the game.
It's funny you say that because we were talking about 81 Giants, and of course with Ray Perkins as the coach, and when he came in back in I guess he came in with Phil. He came in '79 because he came in with George Young,
right?
And he was kind of a no-nonsense type of coach, and the players so the Giants players kind of ruled the roost for a long time. So Perkins comes in, and they're having a preseason game. And I'm going to get to this wasn't the point I was going to take, but I'll get to my point in a second. Perkins is having a preseason game, and they lose it. I don't know, 6-10 or something stupid like that. The next morning, Perkins has them at the stadium or at practice, full pads, 30 minutes of goal line football.
Yeah. And
they busted a gasket. And, because that's not, they went to Mara and they're complaining about it. And he's and did Young and they're like, that's what you guys need. Yeah. And so he was trying to instill that then. So Harry Carson and Perkins was a coach, and really maybe 2 years in or year into his tenure as a coach there, Perkins is pissed off at him at the end of a game. So he's giving him the business and saying this and saying that, and how terrible they are. I'm sure a lot of 4-letter words being thrown around in the locker room, and everyone's kind of quiet. And Harry says, to your point, Harry says, I'll go play this game for nothing if you want me to. And I guess everybody looked at Harry like, what are you doing? Like, what are you don't talk to the coach. And Perkins looks at him and says, that's the kind of players I want in this locker room. Yeah. So going to your point, even back then. It's
I love to play if or what happened if, right? So Perkins goes back to Alabama, gets a chance to head coach his alma mater, right? What happens if he stays with the Giants? Does Bill Parcells ever become head coach of the Giants? Does Bill Belichick ever move on and coach, become a defensive coordinator? Right? I mean, there are so many different things. One person does one thing and it affects a lot of things. One decision. Because, after he leaves, Bill Parcells becomes the head coach and the rest is history. But if Ray Perkins doesn't leave and they could keep playing good ball, well, Bill Parcells doesn't become head coach of the Giants.
And it goes back to how we opened the show. Bum Phillips decides to take Lawrence Taylor for the Saints, the number 1 overall pick. Maybe the Giants draft George Rogers. I don't know who they draft. They didn't really need a linebacker. So I don't know how that even plays out and who they pick and where that goes.
That's a good point.
It's just one decision, and you can And it's so crazy when you really think about what you just said. One win or one loss and your draft position changes. And I'll just use last year's draft as an example. If Tommy DeVito doesn't come in and win those 3 out of 4 games or whatever he won,
right.
Giants are in position to draft Daniels.
Yeah.
So now our whole team's as we're talking about it, it's just different. So it just shows you how and I know I guess you could say it about anything in life.
Sure.
I was at the right place at the right time, got that job, did a good interview. But it fascinates me when I look at the NFL draft, and God knows we've talked about it, I think, since we started talking with each other about this. And I have always given you these, we trade back up, or maybe we should have traded back, and we're giving up, capital. We're supposed to be rebuilding this team. How do you give up draft capital?
Right.
So a lot of things that gets people fired.
You mentioned Rob Carpenter. Rob, I don't know if a lot of people remember Rob Carpenter, number 26. He played for the Oilers, right? Yeah. And he comes over from the Oilers, and he was like
Dallas too.
He was a little roly-poly kind of running back. Yeah. Didn't have a lot of speed, kind of strong, right?
Yeah.
He ran for 163 yards on one of those games that we won. And I don't know. I know you got to be a Giant fan to know this guy, Leon Bright, number 45. He would never, folks. He never had a fair catch. He wouldn't fair catch the ball. Didn't matter what. I mean, he got lit up, this dude. I mean, he would never put that hand up. And I remember watching film on this dude, even when he played in Canadian football. Never, ever in his career did he ever put up his hand for a fair catch. So, I mean, they had some really interesting guys there. I just wanted to talk about Neon Leon for a minute, because that's a guy you never heard about anyway. You know what I mean?
It's funny because in today, maybe Rob Carpenter was more built like a fullback than he was a running back.
Yeah.
He had great vision. He was quick, and he had great vision.
I'm trying to remember who you could compare him to.
Wow.
I mean, today there are running backs that are kind of, they kind of go. I don't know if there's any starting running back you can compare him to. I'm trying to think of what. I can't.
The way he was built, he was about 6 feet tall.
Right.
6'1", maybe tops. He probably weighed about 250 pounds, 245 pounds.
Yeah, he was. I don't know if he was
a small guy.
Yeah, no, he wasn't small. He has a big leg. He was a big man.
245 maybe, 240.
Yeah, he was a good sized guy. Kind of like a John Riggins. He's not in the class of John Riggins.
No.
Kind of like that. He's built like that, and not as fast as Riggins by any means. So I mean, he
was
just
Robert Newhouse.
There you go, something like Robert Newhouse. That's a good comparison. And in fact, people are like, "Who the hell's Robert Newhouse?"
The great Dallas Cowboy running back. And I still have dreams of him running over Giants. So.
Oh, Jesus. I just have nightmares of that. So let's talk about the draft a little bit. I got a list of quarterbacks here, Bobby, who they say are the top. I don't like any of them, to be honest with you, as far as the first pick, right, in the first round. You got Sanders. You got Ward out of Miami. You got Milroe out of Alabama. You got Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. Quinn Ewers out of Texas. Drew Aller out of Penn State. He's not ready for the NFL at all. Nussmeier out of LSU. James college football team. Curtis Rourke out of Indiana. Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. And, he was a big name coming into the Ohio State game. Gabriel, he took over for Bo Nix with Oregon. And a lot of people thought he was going to be really good, and he didn't look that good that last game. So those are the rankings of the best quarterbacks available. I don't trust any of them. I really don't. Shedeur Stevenson, good game, bad game, throws interceptions. I know his line wasn't that good. But me and Linda were talking. He's a bling kind of guy, right? He he's a lot into himself. It looks like he's a lot like his father, all right? And they're best buddies. I just don't know if he's a leader on the field. I don't know if he can be that. Maybe he can. I don't know. I don't like Ward because Ward kind of he's a second half quarterback. He makes a lot of mistakes. Milroe makes a lot of mistakes. This quarterback class to me is really weak. And we got the number 3 pick. I don't think we can screw this up. I think you go with the best player available. I really
do. So speaking of the quarterbacks and looking at the Giants, and I think J Train like Robert Newhouse, it looks like.
Yes.
A couple things. Sam Darnold, and I'm going to talk about the Vikings a little bit anyways right now. So what do you do if you're the Vikings and you just throw it out there? What do you do with Sam Darnold? That's going to be I know he's playing tonight. If he lights it up tonight and they go on to have a big win tonight, maybe it's already a no-brainer to bring him back. I don't know, because I'm hearing rumblings that they're on the fence about what to do with him.
What would you do, Bobby? I mean, does he got to at least go lead him to the Super Bowl? And does he have to have if he loses tonight, does he have to play out of his mind?
Yeah, I still think he has to play out of his mind. I mean, Sam Darnold, to me, could be another Jones. He could be another Daniel Jones for us. He might come in and lay an egg next year. Maybe he goes back to the Vikings and they go to the playoffs again. But I just don't. If you're the Vikings, you're really in a tough situation when it comes to the quarterback. Because you've got three number one drafted quarterbacks on your team right now.
Good point. Good point.
So you drafted J.J. McCarthy to be your future. You probably you're probably going into the season and said, we're gonna sign Sam and he's gonna be that bridge quarterback. But Sam said that when he was with San Francisco, he learned more there in 2 years than he's learned in all of his years in the NFL. That's how their offensive brain trust is over there in San Francisco. He said, I can't believe what I've learned there. So maybe he's going to be a better quarterback. I don't know. Saunders was sacked 40-something times. Now, I don't know if that's bad offensive line, if he's not finding the open receiver, if he's locking in on one receiver who's not open. So I don't know enough about the Colorado team to really say, I know that their offensive line is this or their receivers are that, but I know he gets sacked over 40 times this year. So something's wrong there.
Yeah.
As far as Cam Ward goes, I mean, yeah, he's got the measurables. Is he another Daniel Jones? Maybe. I don't know. He moves around in the pocket like Jones does. Maybe he got a better arm.
There's a quarterback coming out of Syracuse, 4,000 yards this year, 40-something touchdowns. That's ridiculous. He broke Deshaun Watson's records in Syracuse. Let me see if I can get his name here. Kyle McCord, a good Irishman. He's coming out of Syracuse.
I like a good Irish. I like a good Irish football player.
Yeah, an Irish quarterback would be very well. I don't know. I think the Giants go get the best player available, and then there are going to be quarterbacks like Quinn Ewers, like this kid out of Syracuse, other quarterbacks that are going to be available in the second, third round. And I think that's where you end up going. Now, the Giants kind of need a quarterback to start next year. Are we going to start the same quarterback we had this year? Is he going to be our starting quarterback? I don't know, Bobby. Who else? I mean, we can go out and get who are we going to say we get Sam Darnold. Say Sam Darnold becomes available. Say J.J. McCarthy becomes available. Say they're going to want something for him. They're not going to give him up for free. So you're going to either end up. I think Minnesota franchises Sam Darnold. To be honest with you, that's what I think they do. You got Daniel Jones there. I don't know if O'Connell thinks he can make Daniel Jones good or better than what he was. I don't know. You got McCarthy with a foot injury. I don't know if he's ready to play this year or not. I don't know if Milton of the Patriots is ready to come in and start. You mentioned Justin Fields. Justin Fields has potential, but is he ready to start and be the starter for the Giants? I mean, he can run, which is good because the Giants' offensive line definitely had a little problems this year. I think they'll be better next year, but I still think you're going to have a quarterback that's a little mobile to be running around with the Giants' offensive line. So I don't know. Yeah, I know you like Justin. I know you like Justin Fields.
I've been banging the table for Justin Fields now for the last 2 months.
Yes.
I like Justin Fields a lot. That being said, Mel Kiper, we talked about this before we come on. Sanders does hold the ball too long. I have read that also. Thank you.
Yes.
Before we came on, Mel Kiper has floated a rumor. I don't know if he started the rumor, if he's heard the rumor. If this draft is still a few months away, so there's going to be a lot of rumors between now and the end of April that the Vikings may be willing to take the Giants' 3rd overall pick for J.J. McCarthy.
Right.
So if J.J. McCarthy, from what I've read, was coming out of the draft this year, right now, he'd be the number 1 quarterback taken.
Oh, yeah. I believe that.
So I guess my question is, do the Giants give, if that's what's going to take, do the Giants give the 3rd overall pick to possibly the future of our in I guess roll the dice. I don't even know. I'm trying to figure out because he's coming off an injury here.
Right.
Do you roll the dice and see that player who played for Ohio State, and all he ever did at Ohio State was win?
Well, wait a minute.
In high school, he won. He's never lost anywhere he's ever been.
Wait a minute. J.J. McCarthy played for Michigan.
Michigan. I'm sorry. Michigan.
Michigan ran the ball most of the time. He didn't really have to. He's a mobile quarterback. He really didn't have to throw the ball that much to win. Michigan just ran the ball down your throat. He looked good in preseason, but his preseason before he got hit, is that a measurement?
Right.
They liked him last year, right? They were thinking about. Yes, they did. I just don't know, and I'm with Train here. I don't know if he's 3 overall. I don't know. Is he better?
Is it a 2 this year and a 2 next year?
Is he better than Quinn Ewers? Is he better than Justin Fields? Is he? I don't know either. See, that's the problem. And you got a guy like Travis Hunter that could be a shutdown cornerback that can play special teams and that could play a little wide receiver here and there.
10 or 15 plays a game, maybe. You put him in at the wide receiver position, and maybe he pops a couple.
Yeah.
He'll be catching passes then from Justin Fields.
And he's a playmaker, right? I mean, the kid's a playmaker. I mean, he can go in there and run a jet sweep for you every now and then. I mean, he's a playmaker. And that is something that the Giants need. They got Malik Neighbors. They need somebody else that can give you that big play.
Even though he's not starting on the offensive side of the board, you had I don't know if it's 8 or 10 plays a game on offense that he comes in and plays, and jet sweep. You could do a lot with him. I mean, he's probably you could do a lot with him.
Yeah,
I mean, he's fast, he's big, he's strong. I mean, you hit Neighbors going down one side and him down one side for a half a dozen plays, or between 8 and 12 plays a game. Yeah, and he's a shutdown corner on the other side. Maybe Bank gets moved over to the number 2, which is fine.
Right.
And maybe we got something going, and then we signed Justin Fields, and we got something going.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, listen, I always liked Justin Fields. I think if he had the right kind of development, I think he could be a good quarterback. I don't know if he's a franchise quarterback, but I think he's good enough to have a team win. And
I'm just basing this on, and I'm not in the meeting rooms of the Steelers. Maybe they don't want to bring Wilson back. I mean, we haven't got to the games yet, but I thought he did not play well.
No,
over the weekend. So I mean,
I fault the Pittsburgh defense more than I fault him because I don't think I don't know what happened to Pittsburgh defense this last 3 games. I mean, they were shutting people down. They ran all over them. They passed all over. There was nothing that the Steelers defense did that I would stand out and say, wow, man, they really challenged that offense. It was, and that was without Flowers too. That was without one of the big wide receivers. So let's talk a little bit about it. So Baltimore pretty much, what do we have, 21-7 by halftime? I mean, I mean, that wasn't even really a game. Houston surprised everybody, Bobby. Everybody was taking the Chargers. And
the Chargers scored, 30 points the last 3 weeks in a row. They're scoring over 30 points. Houston's defense played out of their minds.
Unreal.
I thought that was, when I was watching the game, it's like, oh my God.
Unreal.
They can't do anything against this defense.
Yeah, I think only 2 of our guys picked Houston to win that game. I mean, listen, not only their defense just went all over Herbert. Herbert threw, I don't know, 4 interceptions or something ridiculous, or 3 interceptions. And, C.J. Stroud, 2 big plays, drops the ball, picks it up, runs to the sideline, throws it downfield, 30 yards first down, runs for 27 yards first down. And it just, at the end, they just pulled away from the Chargers. I mean, the Chargers did not look ready. They didn't look ready to play in the playoffs. Houston did. I don't know how good Houston's going to do against Kansas City. It's a different team, but
I'm not sure Kansas City. And we can maybe at the end if we have some time, we can maybe quickly go through some of those. But I'm not sure Kansas City is the team that they were last year.
My God! Here's another one. Here's another one. Okay, we'll talk about it at the end. Buffalo at Baltimore. I think this is going to be. I hope this is going to be a good game. I hope Buffalo plays a lot better than they did the first time. They got to stop Derrick Henry. I don't know if Buffalo's defense can stop Derrick Henry from running the ball.
I like the Ravens a lot. They looked good. Henry had close to 200 yards rushing. Jackson threw the ball well. I mean, they're going to be a tough out for anybody. If I'm a Buffalo Bills fan, I think Buffalo will be favored. They're a better team, slightly better, maybe favored by, I don't know, spread maybe 2 points. I don't know. But if I'm a Buffalo fan and a player, this is a tough draw. In the second round of the playoffs. It's a tough draw.
I agree. Look, yes, we got to give that too. Before we go any further, we'll get back in the playoffs. I got to give the trivia answer before I forget. So the question was, let me get to this here real quick. All right. The question was, thank you for reminding me, producer. Which player for the Giants scored the most touchdowns in one game? Bobby, I'm going to let you give it a shot. It could be any player. Doesn't have to be a receiver, quarterback, running back, defensive player.
I'm going to say it was Ernest Gray.
Ernest Gray. Ernest Gray. All right, Ernest Gray. Ernest Gray in one game. Maybe. I mean, that's a guess. It's not right, but it is a guess.
It's a guess.
It is a guess. How can we forget the old Giant that was their best running back maybe of all time? I mean, you could say Tiki Barber's up there or not, but it was Frank Gifford.
Frank Gifford.
8 touchdowns in one game.
I should have guessed that.
Yes, you should have. I don't know why you didn't, but yes, Frank Gifford.
You know why? Because I thought it was going to be one, a player that, an obscure player that, maybe was with the Giants for a few years, had a couple good years like Ernest did, and then one day he just lit it up. Scored about. Remember the tight end for the Giants? God, I forget his first name. Danielle, is that his last name? He scored like 3 touchdowns in one game.
Don't remember Danielle. I don't remember.
Just a few years ago too. It wasn't that long ago, and he scored like 3, maybe 4. I mean, he scored a bunch of touchdowns in one game. And,
really?
I can't remember. Tiki Barber.
Good try. Tiki was a monster. He was a monster. Definitely was a monster.
What the heck is that tight ends? Again, that was the type of player I was thinking, like one of those, run of the mill. Oh my God, look at this guy. What happened to him? And a year later, he's out of the league.
Was he paired up with one of our tight ends that are playing right now? Right? I mean, he was paired up with it.
No, it's a few years ago. It was a few years ago. Time goes by. It was before. It had to be with Eli as the quarterback. It was
not shocking.
Nope, not shocking.
Larry Danielle.
Larry Danielle scored like 3 or 4 touchdowns in one game.
Did he? All right,
Yes.
Producer Linda is just throwing things at us over here. Thank you.
Number 84.
Number 84. There you go.
Did he how many touchdowns, Producer Linda?
Looking. How many?
One game.
In one game.
Okay, one second. I'll get it. Go ahead.
All right. So Houston and KC, we're going to talk about that later. Washington pulls up. People may
That's
think that's
game of the
a
day. That's game of the weekend.
Tampa Bay, that last second doink in by the Washington Commanders. Listen, I love Baker Mayfield. I really do. I think that guy is got so much heart in that little body of his. Not scared of nothing. Is willing to put everything on the line to win. Felt bad for him, but Tampa Bay is always, I think, going to come up a little short, Bobby. Just a little short. They don't have something. I don't know what it is. They just don't have something to get over the top. Maybe it's because they're in a weaker division. I don't know. But they just don't have that one thing. And Jaden Daniels, the kid is cool as a cucumber. I mean, they win the game. The ball goes in. He stands. Everybody's yelling and screaming. He gets up and smiles and walks to the midfield. I mean, he's like, yeah, okay. Yeah, we won. Yeah.
I'm supposed to do this. This is what I'm supposed to do. I don't know what you guys are excited about.
Yeah.
I knew I was going to do this.
3
touchdowns in one game.
Right.
September 25th, 2014. And that's the only one that ever did that since Joe Walton in 1962.
Joe Walton.
Yeah, that's yes. And I knew Larry Daniel did something that put him in the record books for that one. And I can't tell you anything else he did, but that one game he was.
Yeah. First tight end since Joe Walton, who also played basketball, folks. I'll just let you know that.
Interesting.
So anyway, Washington played a hell of a game. And now tonight we got Minnesota, the Rams. Whoever wins that goes against Philly. Bobby, I'm taking the Rams. I like Stafford. I like the passing game. I like the Rams' underrated defense. I like their running back. I think it's a good matchup. It's going to be a good game. I think Stafford with experience pulls it out at the end.
I'm 50-50 on this. I'll go with you.
Okay.
I can see the game going either way. I really could. Depending if we see the really good, the really good quarterback play that we've seen from the Vikings all year long, or we're going to see, not so good. Because the last few weeks, he hasn't really played like he did, I think, at the beginning of the year.
Right.
So we'll see if that's the quarterback we're going to see today, or we're going to see, and if that's the quarterback we're going to see, the not so good quarterback, then I think the Rams will win that game. 7 points, 10 points, maybe 7 points, something like that.
It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting chess game between the defensive coordinator versus Matt Stafford, defensive coordinator of Vikings versus Matt Stafford. They're both, the veteran quarterback against a really good defensive coordinator here in Glenn. I mean, he's one of the best in the league. Before we get to the Kansas City Chiefs, Vrabel to the Patriots. What are your thoughts? Gerard Mayo was let go after a year. And we know why now, because they moved Vrabel right in. I don't know what they expect him to do next year. I don't think he's going to do much better than 4 or 5 wins either. So well,
it could impact the Giants, obviously, because Shane Bowen was his defensive coordinator with the Titans. So I wouldn't shock me. So here's a funny thing. I'm glad you brought that up. The Giants haven't moved on from Bowen yet, and I really thought they were going to move on from him at the end of the season.
Right.
Now, they probably knew Grable was going to get a job someplace. And maybe they anticipate, this is just my own theory, maybe they anticipated Grable to come knocking on their door and asking if he could speak to Bowen about possibly joining him wherever he was going to land. I mean, because he was going to get a head coaching job someplace. Right. And this could be an easy way because the Giants if he leaves, what is this going to be like our fourth defensive coordinator in 5 years? It's
something like that.
It's something kind of a revolving. I mean, Wink was here for a couple, but before him it was kind of a revolving door. So it wouldn't shock me if he goes there. There's another Giants coach though too that also was with him in the Titans, and I forget which one it was off the top of my head. That he's who's our quarterback coach?
Kafka?
No. Kafka is the offensive coordinator. Who's the quarterback coach?
I'm not sure. I know Kafka was the quarterback.
So the quarterback coach for us was the offensive coordinator for the Titans under Grable. So I anticipate, because you want to surround yourself. I don't care what walk of life you are. I was a manager of a lot of people when I worked. I wanted to surround myself with people I knew.
Definitely.
That could do the job. So it's not going to shock me if we lose a couple coaches to the Patriots over the next week or so.
Speaking of losing a coach, McCarthy walks. He's done with the Dallas Cowboys.
I saw that.
A lot of rumblings about Mike Tomlin going there. Mike Tomlin ain't going to the Cowboys, folks. Calm down. That ain't happening. He's got a no-trade clause. It will be up to him whether he leaves or not. I wouldn't expect – if Tomlin leaves the Steelers, I don't think he goes coaching anywhere.
He'll probably take the year off, just kind of –
Yeah, at least 1 year. At least 1 year. Shea Tierney is the quarterback coach. But anyway I don't think Tomlin goes back to coaching anywhere for a year, 2 years. Maybe he's done. Who knows? I mean, once you get behind that booth and the camera, who knows? Maybe he's all done. It's a wear and tear, 24-hour day job. He's been doing it for how long? 18 years as a head coach. Not counting all the other years he was coaching. So I don't expect him to go anywhere. McCarthy's interesting. McCarthy is, I don't care what anybody says, McCarthy is a good offensive coordinator. He worked with Dak Prescott. He worked with Aaron Rodgers. He made, if you talk to Aaron Rodgers will tell you he's one hell of an offensive coordinator. So, they've been talking about him at the Rams. They've been with the young quarterback, Caleb Williams. I think that he comes and he gets another job. If not a head coach, at least a coordinator. I think maybe he'd rather be a head coach though.
I've heard, and again, rumors. You read them, you listen to things, and I'm hearing the Saints.
Yeah,
so that would be a landing spot. And speaking of the Saints, and Sean, if he does leave, do the Giants sign Dennis Allen as their defensive coordinator? He's from Jersey, isn't he? He's from the area.
Good
so
question.
Do they take the Saints head coach, great defensive coordinator? I think that would be an outstanding hire for the Giants. If the dominoes fall that way, I mean, if Sean leaves, and I would think he would be at the top of their list. I would hope, at least to come in and talk about what his philosophies are. I think he's a Jersey guy. Come home, who knows?
Yeah, who knows? It's a great point. So real quick, we got like a minute left. People keep saying the Kansas City Chiefs will barely win. They're not as good as they were. They got more talent this year than they had last year. They get good. The playoffs of their time. They cruised to a 14-2 record, and they're like, the Chiefs are good. Who's better than the Chiefs? They won 14 games. In the last game, they gave away to the Denver Broncos. I mean, they let their third stringers and the towel boys play. Come on, guys. They're the best team in the league record-wise. I don't care what their statistics are. The Chiefs know how to win. They're experienced. They got one of the best quarterbacks in the league, one of the best coaches, one of the best defensive coordinators. There is no way in hell. I mean, I'm not saying Buffalo cannot beat them. But boy, It doesn't look good for the AFC.
But Florida has beaten us, so we know they can.
Yeah, I'm talking about when it counts, Bobby, not during the regular season. That's fine. So anyway, folks, thanks for joining us. Me and Big Bobby G. Appreciate it, J-Train. Thanks for all the comments and thanks for all the likes and the views and hopefully shares later. This is your official Giants podcast, folks. Join us every Monday at 5 p.m. and we'll cover the Giants up and down for you, good or bad. And we'll be going over the Giants' history. 1982 is next week, folks. I don't know if you remember it.